Yes. Yeah. You has the webinar been started? I started it. Okay. And it's been done. So thank you everyone for coming out this evening. I'm going to welcome us with our land acknowledgement and then also a little introduction to the series. So the Berkeley Public Library is built on the territory of the Neuroscience and Trevino speaking below people. We honor the 5,000-year history of the communities of the West Berkeley, Shalom, and the current Ohlone communities in the city of Berkeley and throughout Alameda County and the West Bay. The library recognizes that Berkeley residents have and continue to benefit from the use and the occupation of unceded stolen land, and that the namesake of our city benefited from and advocated for settler colonialism and the forceful conversion of Indigenous children to Christianity. Berkeley Public Library is committed to helping create a more just and anti-racist society and furthering the visibility and celebration of Ohlone authors and culture in our collections and programming. So welcome everyone to Popping the Science Bubble. We're so excited to be here tonight. This is a monthly seminar series that aims to share new research findings from grad students and postdocs at UC Berkeley with the general public and create a constructive discussion about a variety of science topics. We're here on the first floor every third Tuesday of the month at 5:30. We have two speakers at each seminar who will talk about their current research or a topic that they just find really interesting. The organizers are three graduate students at UC Berkeley, Kaylin Zong, Daniel Bretthauer, and Madison Weimer. Lectures happen on the third Tuesday of the month at 5:30. These programs are live streamed from the Science Bubble YouTube page, so you can view them later and share them with others. And there is just a full archive of videos, so if you enjoyed tonight, I recommend you check it out. Popping the Science Bubble also has a website and a listserv that you can join to keep up to date on new Science Bubble lecture topics. So I'm going to let the Science Bubble team introduce tonight's speakers, but thank you everyone for coming out.
Yay.
Are you ready? Oh, that was yours. I'm so sorry. I thought I was opening mine. Oh, I haven't. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It logged me out of my account. Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Kelsey, for introing us. Yes, like Kelsey said, we're here the third Tuesday of every month, sharing research from a wide variety of speakers. And so there's a bunch of different topics that we try to vary up as time goes on. So hopefully if you are interested in the lecture series, there should be a plethora of interesting research to share in the future. But for tonight, we're excited to introduce Stefania Pezzoli, our first speaker. She's from a small village in the province of Bergamo, in the mountains of northern Italy. After studying neuropsychology at the University of Padua. Sorry. She moved to Sheffield in the UK for her doctoral studies, focusing on the neural correlates of visual hallucinations in neurodegenerative diseases. She's now doing her postdoc in the Jogas lab at UC Berkeley, studying brain and cognitive aging and its relationship with Alzheimer's disease pathology. Outside of the lab, she loves traveling and dancing, and we're excited to hear your talk tonight. So thank you, Stefania. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks so much for the introduction, for the opportunity to be here and talk about research. Thank you very much for being here. I'm very happy to talk to you about this. So today I'm going to talk about successful cognitive and brain aging. So I will start introducing the topic and also I'll be giving you a bit of results from research that came out from the research that I'm doing here at UC Berkeley. So firstly, first of all, I'd like to talk about cognitive aging trajectory. So what do we mean? So how do the cognitive abilities change over time, especially with aging? And with cognitive ability, I mean, or learning, memory, and other thinking skills like reasoning, problem solving, etc., that decline with age. So if you think about it, so there's a cognitive functioning and change over time as people age, then there's a range from what is considered typical aging. So typical age-related cognitive decline, so most people experience that with aging, to also mild cognitive impairment and dementia. So that meaning to cognitive pathological cognitive impairment to dementia, so where also daily living functioning is compromised. But that's not it, because there are also older adults that actually do not decline, so that they are able to maintain their performance with age. So that we will refer to as successful age, so successful cognitive aging. But first, before diving into successful aging, I would like to make sure that we're all on the same page on a few terms. And the first one is dementia. So what is dementia? Dementia is an umbrella term and is a group of symptoms. So a syndrome that include compromise, ability deficits in cognitive functions, including memory, as I said, learning, and other thinking skills. So dementia is not a disease itself, but it's a symptom that is caused by different diseases. For example, frontotemporal dementia, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, and Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause of dementia. So Alzheimer's disease, dementia then, what is the underlying biology? What's causing Alzheimer's disease? Well, we don't really know exactly, but we know that there are certain pathological changes in Alzheimer's disease that we refer to as Alzheimer's disease pathology that we can see with a microscope. And if we look at the brain tissue with a microscope, we can see aggregates of proteins. There are neuritic plaques, so this amyloid beta here, and neurofibrillary tangles of tau proteins that aggregate in the brain and eventually cause dysfunction. So and eventually neural death and this dysfunction, cognition, and all the symptoms that are covered. So here we see it with a microscope, so we can see that this pathology in the brain tissue post-mortem, but also now there are biomarkers, so we can see the pathology in vivo in patients with Alzheimer's disease. And we do that using molecular imaging, using PET, particularly position emission tomography, so that we can actually see in vivo the pathology in the brain. So that's using a scanner. So our participants come in and they do a series of cognitive tests. So we want to assess their abilities, cognitive abilities, and also they undertake this PET imaging so that we can look at amyloid beta and tau in the brain. So here, for example, you can see there's the red, it's where we can see the pathology accumulating, so we can quantify it, so we can see how much pathology is there, but also the topography, so where in the brain the pathology is accumulating. So you wonder, okay, I thought it was a successful aging talk. What are you talking about? Alzheimer's disease? Well, I'm talking about this because since I already told you that there's a high variability in how people age and how in aging trajectories, cognitive trajectories. And not only in that, but also there's a high variability in the clinical expression of Alzheimer's disease pathology. So how this pathology in the brain actually is impacting the functions. And there are also cognitively normal older adults that do have the pathology in their brain, but they don't show symptoms. They're functioning very well, and they just don't have symptoms. So in this scenario, we refer to as this cognitively normal older adult as resilient to the pathology. So they have better than expected cognition given the level of the pathology. So we would say that they're coping with the disease, so they function despite the disease, as opposed to another term that is resistant to the pathology, so avoiding the disease itself. So, and this is one of the questions that we wanted to answer to in the successful aging picture. So are successful agers resilient or resistant to the pathology? But first, again, who are the successful agers? There could be many ways to define successful aging. What is successful aging? So here we specifically study successful cognitive age. So we look at all these functions that I mentioned earlier. So memory, learning, thinking skills, and so that's how we want to define our successful age. So we're interested in cognitive aging specifically. And in our lab, we developed this prediction age prediction model based on this cognitive test. So as I said, our participants come in and do a series of cognitive tests as well as PET imaging. And through these tests, we're able to say, okay, this person, given their performance on these tests, a certain cognitive age, we call it. So as opposed to chronological age. So as you can see here on the x-axis, chronological age and cognitive age on the y-axis. So the gap, so the difference between the two, so their actual chronological age and their cognitive predicted age. So the age that is expected for their cognition. So what their cognition look like, their age, if you only look at their cognitive age. So if this gap is 0, then meaning that they're equal. If this gap is positive, then meaning that it's older than the chronological age. Why if it's negative, meaning that their cognitive age is younger than their actual age. So for example, if a person is 80 years old, their chronological age is 80, and their cognitive predicted age is 75, let's say, so this gap would be -5, meaning that their cognitive age is actually younger. So their functioning is younger to what would be expected for their age. And this is how we define our successful users as participants with the younger cognitive age. So once the participants come in, then we see and the participants with a younger cognitive age are defined as successful agers, and the others are classified as typical agers. So this does display a typical age-related cognitive decline. They're all cognitively functioning, so there are no patients in this research, but specifically. And so they do all sorts of cognitive tests. They do PET imaging so that we can look at amyloid and tau in the brain and quantify the pathology. And also they do MRI scan as well, so that we can look at brain structure. So in particular, we look at cortical thickness, so how thick the cortex is. So if you think about the cortex as always, our brain cortex is folding, and if we can actually measure how thick is the cortex, And then we can see how whether the successful agers actually do they have a thicker cortex or not as compared to typical agers. So we looked at this using MRI. And so what we found was that, so here is an image displaying our results, and an inflated image of the brain displaying the right in the middle, so the medial part of the brain, so right in between the two hemispheres. And we found that in the specific region called mid-cingulate cortex, our successful agers had a thicker cortex actually compared to, so there was some sort of preserved structural integrity as opposed to typical agers. But we didn't look only at the cortical thickness, we also looked at the brain volume of, in particular, of a region that's known to be very important for memory abilities, as well as one of the earliest regions that is impacted by Alzheimer's disease, that is the hippocampus. And we found that the successful agers had a greater hippocampal volume. So you can see here in this graph the hippocampal volume, and that on average, successful agers have greater volume, so they're bigger hippocampus compared to typical agers. But what about the pathology? So we actually looked at the pathology in all our participants, looking at both amyloid and tau. And interestingly, we found that successful agers had lower levels of pathology in the entorhinal cortex. That is one of the earliest regions where tau starts accumulating in the brain, also important for memory abilities. So suggesting in a way that successful agers are in a way resistant to the accumulation of this age-related tau pathology in their brain. So it had a less tau deposition. No differences in amyloid, suggesting that despite their cognitive, so participants could have certain amounts of amyloid deposition in their brain, but still could redefine the successful agers could be functioning very well and maintain high cognitive ability at an older age. So to conclude and summarize, so here are just the two main results displayed. So a thicker cortex on one hand and well greater volume too, as well as lower tau deposition. So it could be that a combination of factors actually lead to successful aging. So structural integrity of the brain structure, as well as resistance to age-related tau. And combination of both may underlie successful aging and promote an effective cognitive functioning at an old age. So why is that important? It's because, like as we age, we wanted to understand how unhealthy brain healthy brain works and has functioning cognitively a successful cognitive ager brain works, so that we can promote healthy aging. And also they could be targeted for example, new intervention to help maintaining cognitive performance or help mitigating cognitive decline of patients. So I would like to thank my whole lab, the good lab here at UC Berkeley. All lab members are fantastic scientists and people. I'm very lucky and happy that to work with them all. And especially thanks to my mentor, Dr. Jagos. And also, of course, to all our participants, and without them, this research wouldn't be possible. And I also want to mention that all the participants were from the Berkeley Aging Cohort Study. If you want to know more, here's the QR code, so you can learn more about the research that we do. And also, if you are one or know someone that may be interested in participating in the study and want to know more about it, that's also a good place to actually do that. So thank you very much for listening and for organizing and everything. I'm very happy to be here. And this was my contact. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer. Yeah, also, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
So I would love to hear some about like how you define the successful agers in their ability to for their like cognitive ability is higher than the typical agers. Could it be that that's the case since childhood, like that they have always been overachievers in terms of the cognitive function or on these tests and that carried out?
Thank you very much for the question. That's a really good point. So here what I presented here is actually looking at one time point. So a cognitive performance at one time point. But obviously since they're older age, we infer that okay, they're maintaining the cognitive performance. So I haven't actually shown everything. I mean everything here, but also they also show less cognitive decline over time too, because also this Berkeley aging cohort study is a large longitudinal and ongoing study. So we actually look at everything I showed you from cognitive tests to also PET imaging and MRI imaging, we look at over time as well. So they actually do show like less cognitive decline over time as well. So kind of in a way validating our approach. Of course, like in general, I would think that it's better to define successful aging based on cognitive maintenance, so actually the ability to not decline over time rather than only having higher cognitive performance, because it could be that they were always had higher cognitive performance. But also that region, the mid-cingulate cortex regions, also we look at it over time, and actually the younger cognitive age was also associated with slower decline, so slower atrophy progression over time. So the brain was shrinking less, let's say, over time too. So yeah, very important. Thank you. Suggesting that maybe we don't really know, because it would be great to have the possibility to have participants from like the 20s or maybe even from birth, but we don't. But yeah, so in a way, yeah, with our data, yes, we show that the slower atrophy progression.
Stefania, I think it's interesting what you're looking at with the resistance and resilience. So with the results that you presented with the differences between tau and amyloid, would you say there's sort of evidence of both of those going on?
Yes, thank you. Yes, absolutely. So it would be like, yes, in terms of tau, given that they show less tau, it would be in a way sign of more of a resistance pathway. On the other hand, showing similar levels of amyloid, that could be like sort of a resilience mechanism to amyloid. Yeah, so yeah, great point.
So looking at that, were there subgroups? Were there some, were there just subgroup that was more resilient and a subgroup that was more resistant? And have you looked at any differences between those groups?
No, I haven't, but it would be very interesting to do that. To start on the other way. So there are other also studies from our lab also, starting from pathology as well. So we look at in different ways. So in specifically related to the successful agers, I haven't looked at that, but it would be very interesting for sure to from the here we start from cognition, and on the other hand we start from brain features and see how successful agers are using other measures of resilience that we also use in other labs also use it. So that would be great to see. Yeah. Because it could be also there are different pathways leading to successful aging, and also in every single person they're interacting different. It could be that there are different pathways. So yeah, it'd be interesting to dive into.
And further questions? Yeah, we can thank our speaker one more time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Stefania. I am now going to introduce our second speaker, Emil Rofors. Emil is a nuclear physicist who blends passion for drone racing with his scientific expertise. He's at the forefront of developing innovative algorithms and methods for radiation detection systems at the Berkeley National Lab. From building 3D printers and electric lung boards, he now combines robots and radiation detectors to build systems that can quickly and safely map radioactive material. After finishing his PhD on how to detect neutrons back home in Sweden, he moved to the US in 2021 to join the Applied Nuclear Physics program, where he is applying his inventive spirit to enhance our capabilities in detecting and mapping radiation. Thank you, Emil, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Yeah. All right, so does this title make any sense? Asking a drone if we should eat bananas. And yeah, you might question this sticker I put on the bananas here, but it's not too wild actually, because yeah, bananas do contain potassium, which is naturally radioactive. And I'm a nuclear physicist working in radiation safety. So should we worry about this? We get asked questions similar to it, like, is an area safe for radiation? For example, after the Fukushima or Chernobyl accidents, where is it safe to go and where should one not go? Where do we need to do cleanup? Or in case of lost or stolen nuclear material, that needs to be found using radiation signatures. Dirty bombs are a threat where it can be good to quickly identify where something radioactive is. So it's not often that we get asked about fruit, and maybe a spoiler alert for the talk here, but bananas are safe to eat. Instead, yeah, we go into those scenarios that I described, and how that has typically been done is you take a radiation detector, maybe a backpack system, and you go around and you play the game of hot and cold. You see, nothing here, a little more here, more, and you can identify a hotspot. But in these scenarios, you want to do it as fast as possible, so we can minimize exposure to people and speed up the cleanup work. And while doing the mapping, we also want to minimize exposure to people. So one good way to tackle both of those points, and where the drone comes in, is to hand the detector over to not a person, to a robot. Could be a drone. We also use robots on legs or on wheels. And we let them go in, not exposing any personnel, and they can react to the incoming data faster than a human operator could, and be more systematic, not missing a single spot if they are tasked to map a certain area for radiation. So that is the basics of our research group, combining the world of robotics and radiation detection. So what's hanging under the drone in the picture here is one of our detector packages that we make, and we combine it so that the computer on here can be used to steer the drone. And our goal is to have autonomous systems that can move based on the radiation data that they measure and the camera feed that what the drone sees. It quickly and efficiently maps an area. But when you put the detector on here and say, fly up in the air, it's not that straightforward to see. You're measuring up in the air and you get an integrated view of what radiation comes from all over the ground. And it's not only the radiation that we're looking for, it's also the natural background radiation. Like back to the bananas, a lot of the things around us are just radioactive. Since I started talking here, we've all had thousands of gamma rays passing through us. And that is just part of everyday life here on Earth. There's potassium, radon, we have cosmic particles. And That background radiation is normally nothing to worry about, but we have to worry about it a little bit because sometimes in our measurements, the signal that we're looking for, the small amounts of radioactive material on the ground, blends in with all that integrated background radiation that the ground contains. So part of my work is writing algorithms that can distill those faint signals from among all that background. And we do that using different statistical tricks and machine learning so that we can really try to make the most out of the data that we measure as we make a map. So I'll show you how these algorithms, a visualization of how these algorithms work. Here we have one of our drones flying, and down here we have placed a radioactive source. So these moving curves are what our algorithms are doing. As we're flying, we try to make our best estimations of where on the ground is radiation that creates the signal that matches what we've seen up in the air. And the more we move around, the more data we have, and the better these best guesses or the curves are, so that eventually they center on, as we see this one narrow distribution right over the source position in orange. And that is what we want to see. And this is one typical scenario that we go out and we bring our own radioactive sources with us, and we can place them in different configurations and then have our systems go and to find them. So we hide sources and the robots are tasked to find them. Yeah, I see. Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, that works.
Okay. Okay, now we have it on Zoom, but I can't change it. Okay. All right. Here we have one of the maps from an actual measurement where we walked a system, handheld this time, around a building. This is from Fukushima, and one of the buildings where they had done cleanup work. So cleanup work after a nuclear accident is with shovels or physically moving the top layer of material and storing that somewhere. That's how we get rid of it. But what we could see after walking around here is that in some of the gutters on top of the roof of this building, there was still some radioactive material. And one could display this as there's actually a unit of radiation, which is a banana equivalent dose. So this topmost active area would be more than what I'm showing here, but tons and tons of bananas equivalent of radioactive material. We have another of the maps that we've done. This one is from Chernobyl. And this is a claw that was used to dig up debris after the accident in Chernobyl. And you can see a photo on the left, how it looks, and what our system can reproduce on the right. And here, red is the most radioactive. And what we can see here is how the claws, they got a lot of radioactive material on them. And then as time and rain that has seeped down and is now located on the ground right under the claw hooks. How am I on time by now? Okay.
We
Little
started
more.
early, so
Oh, great.
you have great, lots of time.
Then I'm gonna show you here a little bit on how autonomous our system works. So we said we want to get people as far away from the radiation. We want the robots to go in by themselves. So on the least autonomous way to do this is what we did this time, walking around the building. Slightly more autonomous is to have a pilot with a controller flying something like a drone, and that has been done here around some shipping containers. And you can see in yellow how the flight path is a little jagged. That's the manual control. And after flying here, we've localized that there was a radioactive source placed inside one of the containers. If we go and pre-program a route, we can have a map of a building and say, walk this path, walk through every room, and then you click start and it will go. That's something we do, for instance, with this robot dog called Spot. And when we put our detector system on the back there, that becomes an efficient tool in going for around indoor environments where a drone might struggle. And also we can put heavier payloads on something that walks on the ground rather than in the air. The battery life can take that. And towards the even more autonomous side here, this is what we want, where human interaction is even less, and the drone or the robot will go into an environment and start measuring and take in the data as it's moving and decide that there's something interesting over there. I'll go and investigate there and map an area completely, even not needing this pre-programmed behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have time, I'll show one flight that we've done. This is from the Richmond field station. So some 20 minutes from here, we often go and bring our sources and let our drones fly and find them. I'm gonna speed through. Now this is fun. Our drone, our source. I'm a skier, and when I was thinking, how should the drone go? Just as an initial test, if you don't know where the source is, when we take avalanche training and you look for someone buried under snow, you take your transceiver and you follow the signal. And when you get close, you do a cross pattern over it and you find the hottest spot along both lines. And that way you can localize where someone is. And that's what I made the drone do in this case. So you're gonna see it fly around, and when it sees a source, it tries to localize it and draw a little cross over it. And that cross, this is the map I want you to focus on. And the blue path shows how our drone has been flying. And the colored map is where the best guess of a source localized is. So yellow means that there might be a source here. Maybe it's over here, but we've flown here and the drone has not yet seen enough of a signal to actually act on it. At this point, we see a star here. That means that it's a strong enough indication of a source being localized there. So now the drone is gonna take a turn and it starts to chase that best guess. And as it's moving, we get more information from that location, and suddenly the best guess moves. Here we go down and do this cross pattern, and you can see as we do that, kind of quenches it, tells the drone that no, this was a false signal. It wasn't actually here. And after completing that cross, the best guess is now on the right side. And it will do a second attempt there. We're doing a cross, and this time, with all this information, the area suspected really narrows down, and that's where we actually hit this. So I think I will skip through some. A lot of my work is doing simulations before we go out enrichment. I sit at my computer maybe 9 days out of 10, and then I go out and test what I've simulated. If you're interested, you can try. Maybe you can beat some of the middle school kids that have been trying this source identification game. So there's a high score list if you dare to try. But that can be done because the simulations are very similar to, we are using game engines to build these simulated worlds where we can go and test behaviors before we go out and do them for real. And game engines have really good tools for that. So a lot of researchers in robotics have turned to the gaming development scene to get tools for this. Yeah, a lot of progress in the robotics space that I'm excited to try here. And also where the title of the talk is, here they're telling this robot arm in natural language, can you move the apple near the cloth? And in our case, that could be telling a drone, look there under the bridge, or scan this area for radiation, a more natural communication where we have an autonomous system. Or you could ask, hey drone, should I eat that banana? And with that, I thank you for your attention. Any questions? Yeah. No.
Okay, sorry.
Mhm.
I was wondering, obviously for these practice scenarios or training scenarios, the source is pretty open, like it's in a bucket and there's not much blocking it.
Yeah.
What are the limitations for this if a source was, I mean, you showed the shipping container, so
Yeah.
obviously there's some amount of blockage, but like what is the amount of protection that it can be under before this system kind of doesn't work so well?
Right. No, that's a good question. And yeah, any shielding around the source will make it harder to find. A strong source with some lead around it or some other, maybe a building wall, might seem equivalent to a weaker source without that shielding. So we always try to push the limit as low as possible. The weaker the source we can find when hiding them in plain sight, the more shielded strong source we could find in real life. The bigger detector that we can put on a system, the more sensitive we are. So on a drone, we're a little limited by weight, maybe this size detectors we put on. We have other systems on cars where we can put multiple big detectors, and they can see through more shielding then. So, and then, yeah, we always want the more bigger detector we can put on a system, the happier we are. But yeah, there's a balance there depending on what scenario you're building for. If it's a very shielded or very weak source, you might need something else than the drone. Yeah.
Why do you think that the game development world has some of the best models for building out like a simulation versus, I don't know, data from other researchers?
Yeah. I mean, I think the games have had more motivation to look good before because players wanted games that has good graphics and looks nice. And tools for the robotics world didn't really have that. It just needed to have accurate enough physics and have the right like interfaces to get your robots in there. Now that image recognition is so good, we have machine learning or AI tools that can really see and use the visual component of reality, then using the game engines that look much closer to reality has a lot of benefits. Then, yeah, a typical robotics developed tool might look like a game from 10 years ago instead. So those images don't look as real. I think that's one of the benefits and one of the reasons why some developers move to the game engine. Yeah.
I know that there's like some neighborhoods where you're like not allowed to fly a drone or
Right.
something. As a scientist, are you able to be like an exception to this rule, or how does that work?
We haven't tried yet to get
Okay.
that permission. We have our field in Richmond, which is really good. It's fenced off and we can work in peace. And other times we've worked at other national laboratories, or mostly we've done these controlled measurements. But yeah, so I don't really know
Haven't encountered
if
that
we
yet.
could, if we wanted to. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about like you want to find these sorts of very, very quickly. And so kind of on the like autonomy scale that you have, I'm kind of curious, like what were the time scales as well for each of those? Right. Like how are you planning on improving that?
Yeah, so how we can go faster by going more autonomous would be, instead of, I want to cover this area, I don't know where something is. Without autonomy, maybe you would make a grid and cover it. You could even make a sparse grid first that goes quickly, and then a more fine grid. But in the most, what I showed as autonomous, where the drone or the robot can make decisions mid-flight, then you could do that first, cut a quick grid, and already know that, okay, the north corner is where I am the most uncertain, then let's go there. So you can, one way to be really fast is to chase the highest uncertainty always. So then you get the most out of every second of the flight. If you always go to the location where you know the least based on the radiation data so far. And that will be faster than if we just follow this grid and don't act during the flight on what we measure.
So suppose the drone is like going to detect or measure a really contaminated area.
Mhm.
Would like high level radiation interfere with the operation of the robot, or do they not really affect each other?
No, there is a limit where any electronics will fail. So we couldn't fly into right after the Chernobyl accident in there. Then it would be more used like making a contour of where the level is so high that we can still go there, but we couldn't really probe closer to it. So these ones they can take quite a lot of radiation, but there is a limit, and a nuclear power plant accident scenario would reach that limit in some areas. So yeah, you could still use these tools to make the contours, but if you want something finer, then maybe not. Please. Yeah.
Way off, I'm not sure, but so could a hospital in a war zone be a source of enough radiation leakage to be a problem?
So the hospital in the war zone would get radiation from where?
Well, if a hospital that has all the machines for radiation, would a war zoned hospital be a source of dangerous radiation?
Yeah,
Or is that
Don't
not
so hospitals in not a war zone, they are actually some of the few things in a city that we do pick up on. because people getting cancer treatments, they get injected with some radioactive isotopes. And some of our systems can see, oh, someone in that car, they've had a treatment today, they glow a little bit of radiation. But I don't know how it would be different in a ward. Yes. Yeah.
Final question, Steve. What you're currently doing, it seems like you have single source
Yeah.
of radiation out on this field, right? And you would imagine if you're trying to map a whole field where there might be multiple sources, it might be better for the drone to at least identify the like more localized spots before zeroing in, or like how
Yeah.
do you approach, drone trying to look for unknown end of radiation sources?
Right. No, we have other algorithms that we make for that case. And some months ago, we were out and we were distributing not one, but hundreds of small sources inside tennis balls. We'd ordered 100 radioactive sources in tennis balls so that they're easy to spot, and we placed them in different configurations and made flights over them. So there is a lot of data there that I am currently working on. And one of the questions then is, what's the best way to approach, those more distributed or multiple sources?
All right, then let's thank both of our speakers. Thing as we wrap up.
Thank you so much. These have been just great lectures today, and you've been a great audience. And we had, oh my gosh, I think, let's see, there's an additional like 6 or so folks on Zoom as well. So people have been following along online.
So again, thank you to all of our wonderful speakers for tonight. And so if you've enjoyed hearing these talks, we have a fantastic QR code for you to use, where you can join our mailing list. We also have a whole bunch of links here. We have our website, Twitter, we have our YouTube, where this talk is going to be posted to eventually. So speakers, if you want to send this to your family or your friends or anything like that, can totally do that in probably a few-ish days, maybe a week or something like that. Our next session is going to be in a month's time, May 21st, also the third Tuesday of May, at 5:30 p.m. right here and on Zoom as well. So we hope to see you there. I don't think we don't quite have both of our speakers planned out yet, but we'll put out some information about what those topics will be as soon as we have that information. So hope to see all of you in a month.
Thank you.
Thank you.